Hi, welcome back to Academic Market Insights. I'm Dr. Russell Rhodes, joined by Dr. Larissa Adamiec. We are going to be talking about long-term financial planning over the course of a few sections. This coincides with some of the teaching that Dr. Adamiec is going to be doing this fall of 2025. I assume these will be up for some time, so I guess I should start specifying that. But this is part one of how many parts do you think we're going to do? Not sure yet. I
Maybe
totally put you on the spot there.
I'm
So,
thinking 16,
oh wow. First of
maybe
16.
14, maybe
Yeah,
14.
maybe we should have communicated a little bit about that beforehand. First of several videos about financial planning. Before we get going, if you like what we're doing here, please hit the like button if you want to be kept up with the videos that we're going to be putting out. And just before I hit the record button, I actually said something to Dr. A, which was we're getting ready to really kill everybody with a lot of material. We're starting back at our respective universities this week. And therefore, we've got a lot of questions to respond to from the students, but we also have some supplemental materials like we're doing tonight that we would really like to get up as quickly as possible. So there's going to be a deluge of videos coming from us. Subscribe if you want to be kept up on those. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to you, Dr. A, and I will interrupt when I feel the need.
And when you just feel like it because it's fun.
Yep.
And I think it really does help the conversation of like,
Oh
where
yeah.
are we? And let's see. So, introduction to retirement planning. And not only is this an important topic for our students, but it's an important topic for everybody who plans to retire one day. And that should hopefully be all of us. One of the things that I was reading through was this 70% of Americans believe that they are going to work during retirement versus only
Yeah.
30% really do. So there's this idea that, oh no, I'm not really going to retire. I'll take another job. And it's for the most part, that's not what happens. So really understanding retirement, what goes into it, I think these are all important discussions. I also think that financial literacy is something that needs to be addressed. And one of the things that I so far like about this is we're going to go slow. We don't have to rush through everything. There's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of information that you can be overwhelmed with quickly, and it doesn't really help with your overall understanding. Now, that's not to say if you start a new job, you have that panic moment of like what to invest in your 401k. Very different. But for a deeper understanding of really what's going into retirement planning, this is for you. Okay, so we're going to be looking at defining retirement. We're going to looking at the two phases, which are accumulation and distribution. This is for you, Dr. Rowe. We're going to be hitting up
Mm-hmm.
a behavioral finance component. Then we're also going to be looking at defined contribution versus defined benefits. And I think this will be interesting really from a historical standpoint. So for a lot of our students, they won't have the deep memory that we do about defined benefits and the challenges it caused for some of these companies. Okay, so we have three different groups that are really interested in um, retirement. Our employers are really interested in retirement because it's a way of attracting talent. Okay. And we're going to see when we get into defined contribution versus defined benefits that funding from an employer standpoint is critical. Okay. So, how to motivate employers to stay with your company, to come to your company, with also not creating a financial burden that it's not sustainable in the long run. Employees are very interested because they're the ones going to be reaping the benefits of that retirement. Also, this is a part of your compensation package. We're going to talk a little bit about overall compensation as well, because again, if you're new to this is an important standpoint. And the government, maybe not an entity that you are thinking about, is very interested in mo in retirement. They're interested in from a tax standpoint. They're interested in it from a perspective of sustainability in the economy. They're interested in the well-being of its citizens. Dr. Rowe.
Yeah, just a couple of things with the employer-employee relationship there, and one of the funny things that I've found in my career is, I typically have worked at places that have matched, maybe 6% of your salary for a 401k, which I always encourage everybody to do the maximum matching there. But I periodically, when we've gone through tight times, and this has been in the corporate world, they may reduce that matching for a year or two. That's one of those things that's kind of flexible. You don't see it on your final paycheck. It does hit you in the long run, and actually, if you choose to save less because they're matching less, your check actually might go up a little bit. And employers that they look at that as a benefit that they are using to compete with other companies for employees, and that's one of those areas that people don't necessarily think about with respect to their total compensation. But if you're going to be at the same company for 10 or 20 years, it can make a big difference.
And I've seen, to your point with employers, I've seen some employers completely cut it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting discussion that human resources will have with the employees. And I've seen that it run the gamut of being very straightforward. We know we're cutting your compensation versus I've seen some employers almost try to hide the fact that they're cutting compensation with the 401k. So I think that's also an important point is what is human resources really saying to you and making sure you fully understand that conversation, that dialogue.
Mhm.
Good observation. I think that's important. What
Uh-huh.
is financial independence? It's the ability to live without having to work. And this is really important because when we start to think about the retirement age, and historically, so I didn't include this, but historically, when you're thinking about retirement, we're thinking about somebody who is 65 plus. And before FDR's New Deal, when we started with Social Security, generations before that, when they hit retirement, a lot of people were farmers. And when you retired, you essentially continue to live with your family. And the farm or your community would then take care of you. And when you had the Great Depression, all of a sudden we had a system that was broken because we didn't have those resources to be able to support those retirees, which is one of the reasons why Social Security was ushered in. And the idea behind Social Security is to essentially take money that you have been earning through your working years so that you have something at the end. Now, this isn't a discussion on Social Security, but some of the issues that came out of Social Security was when Social Security was introduced, it was put in the general fund. So some of those receipts, that income into the government was then spent on non-Social Security items. We also didn't have really good systems in place for sustaining it. And unfortunately, some retirees are too dependent on Social Security, and we're going to explore what the sources of income are. And being overly dependent on any one of those sources can become problematic. And here are our retirement income. So we're going to have Social Security, pensions, and then I lumped investments all together. And investments could be in the form of your 401k, it could be an IRA, it could be all of these different things that people have invested in or saved so that they can consume later.
Mhm.
So if we're thinking about it from an economic standpoint, we all like consumption, right? If we're thinking about our income, some of it's going to go to taxes, some of it's going to go to consumption, some of it's going to go into savings. And that ratio between consumption and savings is going to lead to what is the overall investment.
And a
And
lot of, I was just, one thing with respect to investments is for a lot of people, their home, and you should include the equity value of your home in that because you have the opportunity to downsize at some point and take advantage of hopefully an increase in the value of your home. But for a lot of people, you look at this and you don't necessarily think of the value of your home as being part of what you have for your retirement income, but include that so you don't panic as much. Typically, a lot of people fund their retirement through the home that they lived in for maybe the last 10 or 15 years before they chose retirement.
we're going to talk about in behavioral finance, why that's sometimes a little problematic for some people as well, them not wanting to get rid of the home. So the FIRE movement is, oh, and I'm drawing a blank what FIRE stands for, but it's this idea that you're going to spend less, you're going to save more with the goal of then being able to cover all of your costs in retirement. And the rule of thumb for covering those costs is you need to be able to have a lump sum that if you were to draw down 4% every year for 20 years, you'll have enough money to sustain yourself at your desired level of income. And again, that desired level of income is going to be different for each and every person. Yes, Dr. Rowe.
Financial independence, retire early, fire.
Fire.
There
And
you
again,
go.
it's interesting, they retire early. I believe, and I'm not at retirement age at this moment, but it's an interesting push how Social Security is looking to hold off on retirees. So they're encouraging people to work longer. And from a financial planning standpoint, the idea that if you save more, so that you have the opportunity to have that financial independence earlier. So these are important questions that you're going to have to make for yourself. We're also in a society where at 65, or at least I believe 65 is still very young, and you have a lot that you can do with your life, and perhaps you don't want to stop working, not because you necessarily have to keep working, but because it's going to keep you mentally agile. It gives you a purpose. It gives you a whole lot of social interactions, which are all really good things for life sustainability. So these are all important decisions that need to go into retirement, and only you can answer what feels right for you. So there are two phases in retirement planning. One is the accumulation, and two is the distribution. So the accumulation is that long period in which we are investing, we're putting money away, we're allowing compounding interest to work because compounding interest is pretty neato. And we want to be able to start to see those investments really start to grow. This is why when you think about investing your 401k, you're really thinking about those long-term investments. You're not necessarily thinking about some of the other fund trades that we've talked about in other videos. We're really thinking about what is this value of this investment going to be in 20 years or 30 years. And then finally, the distribution phase is once you achieve or arrive at retirement, then you're going to start to take out what are called drawdowns. And you're going to withdraw funds on an annual basis. Some investments have very specific rules that you have to take out a certain amount of money every year, no matter what. And you're actually penalized if you don't take the money. So you could think that, oh, well, I'll just keep investing in some of those accounts, but really those accounts are designed to be consumed and utilized. What you do with those drawdowns, if you want to reinvest in, that's completely up to you, but you do need to start withdrawing some of those specific accounts. And that will happen during the distribution phase. So accumulation, we can save income, we can invest, and we're going to be looking for those most tax efficient methodologies. So, Dr. Rowe, um,
Yes.
your children are in university,
Yes,
and
they are.
when we think about retirement planning, one of the things that we really need to think about is how do we save for paying for college education for our children? It is a huge expense, and when your child is born, you're looking at roughly 18 years to prepare for this expense. And if you're not prepared, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, if you're not prepared, this could eat out quite a bit of your savings for retirement. So again, figuring out these tax efficient savings, and there's lots of tax efficient savings specifically for college education to really help with retirement planning
Hmm.
because it is so expensive. So these are some of the things that we do during the accumulation phase. Human resources at your firm should, if your firm is large enough, should offer classes to help you with making some of those investment decisions. We're going to look at some other professionals that can help as well. So, in making some of those decisions during that accumulation phase. Distribution, optimization, one of my favorite words. So we can optimize how much income is available and when and where we're going to draw these things down.
Hmm.
So, for example, when we started to just have that discussion around some funds have very specific amounts of, or percentages that you have to withdraw every year.
Hmm.
Those funds you might want to take out and consider using first before some of these other accounts, which might not have those same associated rules.
Hmm.
You have a fund that doesn't need to necessarily be drawn down from, you might want to put off drawing down from those funds so that you can save them for just in case there's an issue. And I think a big part of this is determining our financial future needs. So we're not
Hmm.
talking about medical needs in this section, but future medical needs are incredibly important because these drugs or medications that some seniors need in some situations can take up to a third of their monthly income. And if you're in that kind of situation, then you are going to need more financial drawdowns so that you can cover those expenses. So being very mindful of what you truly need, and especially given if you're starting to think about this in your 20s or 30s, you might not have those medical needs. Okay, so these are some of your more fun topics. In the FIRE movement, we're looking at the idea of saving less, but there is a challenge because if we are going to save more money, what does it mean we have to do? We can consume less now. I have small children. Delaying gratification is not a core strength of theirs. So when we feel good, we'll spend less and we'll actually save more. And when we feel sad, we'll spend more and we'll save less. And this unfortunately has long-term ramifications for how that feels or how that's going to impact our retirement. So some other behavioral financial issues, compulsive spending, hoarding, and gambling. And I'm going to lump the refusal to sell your home with hoarding.
When you've got too much of a home for the number of people that are left in it,
And this
such
is,
as a couple of people have gone off to college, and now you have a house for four people that only two people are living in. That there is something to be said for that because hoarding has there is this mental attachment to the things that you're hoarding, even if it's completely irrational. And I'm not saying an attachment to a home is, there you grow up in a home, all kinds of life events in a certain home. So there is some of that. But one of the smarter financial people that I'm friends with actually years ago, he said, never just think of a home as a roof and an investment. He said the best thing you can do is and it's because he had reached around 75 years old and been living in an area outside of Chicago that has ridiculously high taxes. And part of what he said was, we were married to this home. We should have thought of it as a roof, as an investment, and we stayed 10 years longer than we should have, and we paid for a bunch of other people's kids to go to school.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes down to the rational decision behind where you live, that is a very difficult one, and I do think that the weaknesses are the same as people who hoard. Totally
Oh,
see that. Never thought of putting them together either. I like that.
well, and for people who are unfamiliar with the tax cost of different suburbs outside of Chicago, we're talking between 20 and $30,000 a year in taxes alone. It's a staggering amount of money, especially if you're considering that the home is paid off.
Yeah,
So
property
your
taxes.
property
That's
tax.
yeah. There are a lot of other taxes in Illinois as well.
Right. But and
So
also from a hoarding perspective, if you have started to hoard stuff, there becomes an overwhelming sense that you can't get rid of it, and therefore you can't sell your house because to sell the house, you have to first move the
yeah.
stuff. And it becomes a weird cycle that a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people
Oh
can't
yeah.
get past. Financial infidelity.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So financial infidelity consider is about lying, about spending, hiding money, and then maybe sending money overseas. And these are things that are usually typically happen in spouse relationships, but it
Hmm.
can happen in any type of relationship where you are commingling funds. And again, from a behavioral standpoint, it damages the relationship, but it also damages retirement planning because you don't know how much money that really there really is. You could be in
Yeah.
a situation where you're pleasantly surprised, but most often you're in situations where money has been hidden or taken from you, or money is completely gone. And it's a different type of situation, and given the way our finances are set up for a lot of people, this can easily start to happen. So this
Oh
is an
yeah.
important aspect for really thinking about the behavioral finance piece of investing for your retirement.
Yeah, and like the lying about spending, I have a friend who actually got divorced years ago because he and his wife's savings, and he may have been the last person to buy in at the end of the internet bubble,
Mm,
and he basically lost. I mean, he
yeah.
basically lost about 80% of their retirement funds. It was somebody I knew from college, calling me in a panic, asking me what to do, didn't tell his wife he's did it. And so you've got some kind of, when you say lying about spending, I think lying about losing money,
Mhm.
in ventures, etc. And on the hiding money, I've known some people who have done extremely well within the markets that haven't been 100% straightforward with their spouse as to how much money they're making, until it becomes consistent, just so they don't feel like they can go out and spend immediately. So I do think that there might be something okay with that, but not if you're hiding money for nefarious purposes. And then, sending money, doing anything from a joint account without your spouse knowing about it, that's just basically wrong.
Or
And I feel
even
like
if
that's what the,
a non joint account from your
yeah.
spouse, because depending on the state that you live in, you could be in a situation where all of it's considered marital assets. And again, from a retirement planning's perspective, understanding where you stand is imperative so that you can make good decisions for preparing for retirement.
You
We
should
won't
be
get into the messiness of the actual relationship,
yeah.
but from a perspective of if you're looking at a snapshot of your portfolio, all the different types of income that you have, and
Mhm.
somebody's lying to you about it, you can't make really good decisions about how to invest going forward.
Exactly.
Um, and I was very surprised, but marital financial conflicts come from different preferences. And this is, presenting this as a behavioral finance issue because people have different thresholds for savings and spending. We all have different priorities on how we want to utilize our financial assets. And the last one, I was surprised that this is sourced or cited is this idea of undue financial influence or one person having more control. So you can have a difference of an opinion about how much you're saving versus spending. However, both parties should be have an input, and
Oh yeah.
it issue comes if one person has more than the other. But again, I really want to emphasize everybody has different thresholds for how much we like to spend and how much we like to save.
Mhm.
Um, my 4 and 8-year-old have a very different threshold for saving versus investments than I do. They're very into the moment, and their priorities totally, totally different than mine. Right now, we are turtle focused, and we're very obsessed with getting turtles. Um, not necessarily my top financial priority, but when you're a child, we all have different
That's right.
priorities. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about defined benefits versus defined contributions. And defined benefits are becoming less and less popular with employers for lots of reasons. It's expensive. Okay, well, maybe one really big one. It's really expensive. And we've had companies now where they've had situations where they'll have one employee essentially sponsoring or supporting four retirees. And it's just not a model that can necessarily sustain itself, especially as you have a generation retiring that has incredibly large pension um, benefits. So traditionally, you would be paid an average of the last 3 years of your employment. So if you think about your trajectory of your job and your salary increases and everything, that's going to be probably the highest level that you're going to be paid. And the way defined pensions or the defined benefits or pensions work, you would be paid that until death, or sometimes even
Mhm.
until your spouse died. Huge, right? And
There,
so, good.
yeah, I was just going to jump in, and I think you and I have talked about this before, but I saw a presentation at the global CFA conference about 10 years ago from the folks at CalPERS, which is the they've got the retired teachers in California that they are taking care of, and I've forgotten what the number was, but it was a ridiculously high number of retired teachers still getting full benefits that were over 100 years old. And it's just, living in California, great lifestyle, probably healthier than the average American. And I'm not trying to, I mean, we're both teachers, so, I'm not discounting that. But you do, every year as a teacher, you do get a couple of months to recover. So we go through recovery periods as well.
Mhm.
I get, but they have an issue at CalPERS that they had less money coming in than going out because their retirees were living so long.
And
That becomes a big funding issue for them.
right, and so the funding issues, and this was really big in the early 2000s. I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Rowe, but we had several companies, and like if you were looking at a company to whether or not to invest, one of the hot topics was what is their funding for their pension because so many different firms were
Hmm.
underfunded. And because it's a contractual obligation to these retirees, they had to come up with the money. It wasn't like, well, we can defer it, we can do this, maybe grandma will die next year. No, this is a contractual obligation that these teachers or this employees signed up for. It is a part of their compensation. So
Hmm.
that became very problematic for a lot of companies. So a lot of companies started to cut back or go with the defined contribution, which is your
Yeah.
401k. And this is you invest a portion of it. And then, as we discussed earlier, your company will match a percentage of how much you can invest in. So usually it's based on a percentage of your overall salary. So if it's 6%, you invest 6%, and your company then would invest another 6% on your behalf. And as we discussed earlier, this amount can fluctuate depending on good times versus bad times. It's not dependent on somebody else. And that's an important aspect. So
Mm.
if Dr. Bro retires before me, my salary then might be going into supporting his defined pension, his defined benefits. And we're hoping that there'd be somebody behind me to be supporting of me in a defined contribution. We don't have to worry about those things. They're not linked like that. So you don't have funding issues. You don't have this, you don't have that. So this is much more popular now than pensions are. And I thought this was interesting. And this is from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Wow.
And it's just really a breakdown. Yeah.
No, you get these. I've gotten one of these personally, um, and because everybody knows where I work right now, I don't. So it was a previous employer. I actually worked somewhere that they broke it down once, and the guy included how the cost of your annual birthday cake.
Oh my goodness.
He counted that as a benefit. So, but I've seen this broken, and it's interesting, and this is kind of in line with if you asked me to guess what I would guess, just but I had seen it before.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Different companies have different benefits. I worked for a company called FactSet, and they bought us lunch every day, which was pretty
Yeah.
nice. And they valued that at the time at $6,000 a year. And it's not a benefit that you received via paycheck, but you're not having to pay to go out to eat. I also thought it was a unique way of getting you to work an extra hour because you
Yeah.
work lunch. So,
I was gonna, I was gonna bite my tongue on that one, but that's one of those sneaky benefits.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll also want to talk about healthcare changes for the cost of healthcare. And I think this is also important to understand that when an employee pays for their portion of the healthcare benefits, your company is actually paying quite a bit more so that you can receive all of those benefits of the healthcare. And it's again, if you're a younger employee or have never thought about this or seen it, this is something really important for you to really think about is how much of the percentage are you paying versus your employer? So it can be substantial.
Mhm.
And if you think about just how much comes out of pocket, it can be. So understanding those and when you're making those decisions, because again, if you are looking to save money, healthcare, you don't necessarily want to spend a lot of out of pocket, but at the same time, you want to be making sure that you're healthy so that you don't have extraordinary expenses in retirement at the same time.
Yeah.
So those are all balances that you need to really be thinking about. These are different types of professionals that are out there to help you. I really want to talk about, I think the ones that are going to be most popular once we really think about our financial planners. These are our CFPs, certified financial planners, and then our certified public accountants. Some of these other groups, like the actuaries, they look at understanding, how do I want to say this politely, when your death is and how much you should be preparing for that. Employee benefit consultants, those will typically be done through human resources. Your insurance professional should hopefully be aligned with your financial planner. A lot of time those people do double duty. Valuation experts, now we're starting to get more into Wall Street, and we're starting to think about how people actually value a company, which may or may not really be appropriate. And I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for the majority. Plan
No.
administrators are going to be, again, people in human resources are going to be working more with the plan administrators as well as the URSA attorneys and our pension consultants. And I think this is it. But the
Mhm.
institutions that are working with these types of groups are going to be our banks or mutual funds. And it's really because mutual funds dominate the 401k space. We will do a video just on mutual funds versus ETFs, the big showdown, insurance companies, and then brokerage firms. And that brings us to the end. I hope you enjoyed the introduction to retirement planning. Come check us out at our website, academicmarketinsights.com. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit like and please hit subscribe. Thank you.